You want answers? I think I'm entitled. You want answers? I want the truth. You can't handle the truth.
We are the Madmen of Masculinity.
Your home for healthy masculinity. We're just real men having real conversations for you.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is time.
Hey, I am Kirk M. Samuels.
And I am Jason B. Kendrick.
And we are the Madmen of Masculinity.
That's right. We're just real men having real conversations for you.
Boom.
And, you know, this one is entitled International Man of Mystery. And, you know, we all love James Bond. We love all those characters that you don't really know what they do, but they're cool.
Yeah.
They're really cool. And, you know, because we are the home for healthy masculinity, we are the place we want to help men level up. We want to bring in some of the cool people, people we can learn from. And, you know, today we brought in Mr. Chris Ward, who is an international man of mystery.
Uh-oh.
He is the one that we talk about when we're like, what does that guy do? Who is he? Why is he so cool? So welcome to the show, Chris. Thank you for coming on.
No, it's an honor to be invited, gentlemen. I really appreciate you and all that you do.
Well, thank you so much.
I hear you got a passport, man. You be doing some international stuff, man. What you doing over the pond?
A couple of passports. So I have
a couple.
You got a couple. Oh, wait. Does the government know you got a couple passports?
Absolutely. Because you have some of those that have visas that are long-term, like 10-year visas that are still on the X passport that you need to, hold on to until you update your visas.
See, some of us mailroom brothers, we lucky if we got one passport with a couple stamps in it. But.
Right. Yeah. No, it's something I'm already learning because I didn't know I needed to have a couple for long-term visas, short-term visas. See, all these things are good to know because I like to travel, and one of these days I'll be traveling more. But I mean, okay. So what I know about you, Chris, is that you are a promoter, or what is it? You do Legal Shield. Mm-hmm. So is that a promoter or like?
I'm an independent contractor with Legal Shield. So for the last 16 years, I've marketed probably the number one legal and identity theft service plans that are available on the market today, all across North America. So that's what I do professionally.
So that's all you do professionally?
No,
because I was like, wait a minute, I know you do a lot, but what else do you do? Because I mean, I know Legal Shield's cool because I think I even signed up under you because in my mind, even if I spend $25 a month for 10 years and never use it, the one time I need it, it's going to pay for itself. So absolutely. I was like, okay, that sounds like a good deal, but what else do you do?
Well, we want you using that. But yes, for the last 17 years, so I'll go back and give a little bit of my background so to kind of people understand where I came from. But my background was U.S. Army. So I served for 11 years, spent 4 years of that overseas. And when I got out, I didn't have a job lined up immediately after. I was applying for jobs here, there, and everywhere. At the time, living in Monterey, California. And a friend of mine approached me with an opportunity to go to India. So he was an ex-special forces gentleman that had provided bodyguard services for a bank president and CPA out of California that when he was going to India, he used to bodyguard for, asked me if I would like to take his position. And one, I wanted to go to India, and two, I didn't have a job. So
tends to work out.
So my first visit to India was 3.5 months. And I thought that was going to be my last trip. But I went back 6 months later, and every time I think that that's going to be my last trip, and I've been going to India for 17 years.
Wow. Yeah, I've seen some of those things where you're like getting Indian pizza and you're traveling around, you got your BDUs on and everything. I'm like, what is this guy doing? I had assumed that it was something along with sex trafficking, but you're like, no, it's bodyguarding. I'm like, well, that's cool. That's even better because now you're not like in the middle of things, but you did have some background in that. I know we both have the mutual friend, Katie, who does the global orphan prevention, and her ball is coming up soon, right? Like, or is it next week? Or?
No, it's this Saturday.
Was it this Saturday?
She is the owner and founder of Global Orphan Prevention. So they've worked diligently to mitigate human trafficking in Nepal. And through my work in India and prior to during military service, I really just found human trafficking is probably the worst crime against humanity that can be perpetuated, primarily because not only are this in large children, and it's not just sex trafficking, it's also labor trafficking, but a lot of them are children. And oftentimes, and I'm an advocate, because I want people to understand, is that I'm an advocate for sex work. So I believe in legalizing prostitution. Where I do not believe in is that people that are tricked into these positions and then held against their will for such jobs. And so I saw this primarily in Yugoslavia. So after the fall of Yugoslavia, individuals were being trafficked from Russia and Eastern Bloc states through Central Europe into Western Europe. And so we saw a lot of those victims ended up in states like Bosnia. And I just saw the victims and how they were just devastated as human beings. And so that's kind of where I picked up back starting in 97 and then throughout. And then when I learned about Katie's organization, I understood from my work in India the insurmountable number of victims that are currently in India that have been trafficked from Nepal. And when I saw that Katie, this was her mission, I jumped on board. I've been supporting her for, I think, 5 to 6 years right now.
Yeah, I think it was actually, that's how we met many years ago, was at one of her events. But yeah, I mean, I completely agree. I think it should be a product of choice and should not be, I mean, you should be free to do whatever you want to do, whatever, fits your personality or lifestyle, but to be forced into anything. And I know, we talk about dealing with the government and all the craziness, the taxes, things like that, and not everybody feeling like a wage slave. But at least in this country, you have a choice. I mean, maybe technically we may still be under that banner of wage slavery or whatever, but you still get to choose, what you do. So you have that, at least that much freedom. So yeah, I applaud you for being a part of that, wave of good to at least try to help out in the ways that we can. Because I mean, even going to India being a bodyguard, I mean, that's got to be just something that nobody even thought about. Like, gentlemen, you can get a job in India being a bodyguard. Did you know that?
But even before that, you mentioned really quickly about military service.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what's the military background?
So I started I joined the U.S. Army out of high school, and it wasn't for any patriotic notion. It was a one-way ticket out of a small town. And so I joined in the middle of my senior year in high school, went directly into the Army, went to basic training at Fort Knox, Kentucky. So I was a cavalry scout. So I was in the armored division for the first 8 years of military service. And throughout my time in Bosnia, I spent 2.5 years in Bosnia total, the first year and a half of which I started to get involved in some of the more intelligence side of it. And so I decided to take the language aptitude battery through the U.S. Army and reclassify into human intelligence collection. So I spent a year actually without reclassifying. I spent a year in intelligence in Yugoslavia working as part of NATO's human intelligence asset called the Allied Military Intelligence Battalion. So I wore civilian clothes, hung out with people in the organized crime field. I hung out with a lot of my partners in the Bosnian intelligence service. It was just a fascinating year out of my life. And then went to human intelligence training in Fort Huachuca, Arizona.
Wow.
That was a 4-month program, intensive program. And then right after that, went back to Monterey to study Russian. So my long-term goal was to be a Russian spy.
Wow.
Dude.
Wow. See, this guy makes me tired just hearing it.
How about you aspire to something big? How about you stop being a slacker and do something interesting?
Yeah, I often feel like I'm lazy. That's a lot of people would, when they see me, they're like, you should really do something with
Yeah. No, I see a lot of your posts. I'm going, I'm tired looking at this dude. Like, I'm on the couch like, man, good for you. I'm tired already. But so military intelligence, it's not an oxymoron, or is that just a joke?
It is.
Okay, I was just checking.
Really, if you can breathe and put a sentence together, you could be in military intelligence. So a lot of people think they're like, wow, this is the brightest of the bright.
Right.
And I'm like, no.
But now, do you think the military aspect, and especially all the things that you did in the military, do you think that opened you up to doing all kinds of other things outside the military? Like, most people wouldn't think to even that it'd be possible, let alone to take an opportunity to go to a foreign country and be a bodyguard. I mean, and so do you think that because you had such an interesting journey up front with that initial military career, that opened you up to possibilities of other things you can do after that?
100%. I think that for one is just the overseas travel, because I think there's a lot of fear mongering that goes along people working overseas. And I've spent so much time in developing nations that I just realized that a lot of the fears are, I think that are just non-valid. And I think that if people just are smart and maintain situational awareness and treat the locals with respect and make sure that they just kind of stay in safe areas. I've never personally had one situation in probably 5 years that I've lived overseas.
Yeah, well, you made the point of situational awareness, which you live in this country. You see people driving around. Most of them don't have any situational awareness. And then you have the people who are the quote unquote ugly Americans going overseas. Why don't you speak English? Where's my Big Mac? Well, no wonder you're having a hard time. It's like you got to know where you're going and what you're getting into, and realize that's their country. They speak different languages and stuff. It's like all the people from New York are like come out here and be like, I can't get a decent slice of pizza. It's like you're in Colorado, dude. Like you want New York slices, stay in New York. Like that's how it goes.
Exactly.
But I think it's a testament to us as people, us as Americans, and maybe even us as men in America to be able to flow from one situation, one scenario to another, to be adaptable to life and to opportunities that life might bring. Some of those opportunities might be through career or just in any kind of way. But I think it's a testament to the fact that, if we don't close ourselves to different opportunities, man, you never know what kind of things you'll get to experience in life and places you'll get to go.
Yeah, that's one of the things I experienced being quote unquote load toad. I was F-16 weapons when I was in the Air Force. So we put all the missiles and bombs, played with the bullets, all that stuff. And we used to joke that the only thing we were qualified for in civilian life was to throw bags. Granted, if I had been a little more open-minded, I found out later on that there was some explosive specific jobs for mining and construction, things like that. I could have been traveling around the world, blowing up outdated munitions and, having a good old time, making lots of money. But I didn't know that. I didn't find that out. I think I was out like 15 years. And it was like, I could been doing what?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Oh, yeah. The civilian counterparts to a lot of the occupations of the military right now, I wish I would have known, because I would have been making six figures really early on in life. And I even knew that those opportunities were available. And so I would encourage everybody. I think it's a great in particular for, especially now with today's generation, is not really sure where they want to go into adulthood. And as opposed to burning money on taking college courses that you may or may not be necessarily interested in, is joining the military and, you can dedicate as little as 2 years, I think, in most military services in the military right now. I did 4 years for my initial enlistment only because of the college fund that was available for that. But this gives you a great buffer to, one, is teach you some independence, so you're out of the house, but you still have that, social support network that the military offers you. So you're still going to have a roof over your head. You're still going to have 3, hot meals a day. You have kind of an already friends group that's there to support you. And so I think that there's no better opportunity for people than to join the military, to at least give them that buffer zone if they're not 100% sure about what they want to do as they enter into adulthood. And then there's a lot of benefits. Even if you don't retire, the Veterans Affairs Office offers you healthcare benefits in perpetuity till you die. And, and then there's other benefits if there is some sort of disability that's implied afterwards. So, and then just the lessons that could be learned. Yeah. I think all of us have derived lessons, as you had mentioned before, that may not even be military in nature, like treat everything like you own it, have respect. All of us military officials, we had to work in groups of very diverse working environments with people of different religion, of different race, of different political backgrounds. And we had to depend on each other for success in a mission. And I just wish that some of that bled off into our civilian counterparts, because we get so divisive because we disagree on 10% of issues that we're unwilling to work together. And I just think that that's foolishness. That's childish.
Yeah, that's one of the things I used to joke about, but the older I get, the less I joke about it, the more I mean it. I think everybody should be required to 1 year of military service and 1 year of restaurant service. If especially when you've done both, like I have, and you see the disparity, I think everybody should be required to do at least 1 year of both.
Hey, I know one thing we're required to do right now.
It's time for a break.
Let's take a break. We'll be right back. Mad Men of Masculinity, KLDC 1220 AM. Boom. All right.
I like, what I like about this? We don't know where it's going. It's
good.
Awesome. It's so good.
All right, you ready to blast through since we're...
Yeah, since you got a short amount of time, we're gonna get it going.
And we're back.
We are back.
Yeah, Mad Men of Masculinity.
Right here on KLDC.
Yeah, and we're on the interwebs
everywhere.
Check us out, all over the place, man. We are having this is one of them kind of free-for-all conversations, and it's one of those, man, it really gets you thinking in terms of our journey, our opportunities, all those kinds of things. And, and yeah, Chris, you had a military background as the two of us, and have done a lot of things, since then as the two of us, and you've done a lot more in terms of like the international stuff and travel. You've seen different places, different cultures, all those kinds of things. Anything stand out to you in terms of like a lesson that you've learned, or any lessons that you've learned in your overseas travel and your work in overseas and other cultures?
I would just say that the same adversity that we face in the United States, we face all over the world. Wow. And, it's to the degree, I think a lot of times we believe that we have, because just that American pride, I think that there's a sense of nationalism that a lot of people think that they're in the best country in the world, without realizing that the quality of life is not wholly dependent on what you own and what access you have to a lot of the luxury that the United States does provide. But I've been in, almost tribal communities, and everybody's playing and laughing, and, they're cooking, and everybody's, the family, the social construct that they have going on inside in their tribal life. Yes, they do not have air conditioning, but I've never seen children playing outside and enjoying themselves as much as I have in rural parts of Nepal and India. So I think that we have to understand is that a lot of times we get overwhelmed by the adversity that we face, not realizing that that is the best day in some other people's lives.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, you may not have all the luxuries, but I don't even like luxury items. I think that a lot of the times and that's a whole tangent, but I think there are a lot of times that they're overpriced so that they are reserved for very few people, because if everybody had access to them, it wouldn't be luxury anymore.
Yeah.
So
that was what we actually had Dan Gomer on, and he had an experience where he went down to Costa Rica and he came back. He's like, is simplicity bliss? And it's like, and to your point, a lot of times we get so caught up in the basically materialistic rat race here in the West, especially in the US, and it's just shoved down our throats. We're like programmed to like, oh, get the new iPhone, get the new thing. And you see the commercials, and then it's like they push a button in your brain. All of a sudden you're like, I got to have it. But that doesn't bring you happiness. That's just one more dopamine hit, just like all the smartphones and all the scrolling and the TikTok. It's just a couple more dopamine hits keeping you on that treadmill of addiction. Whereas if you do unplug and doing something like being in the military or going overseas where you get a different perspective. And when I came out of the military, or even before I went in, my dad's last duty station was Huntsville, Alabama. So I went from Nuremberg, Germany to Huntsville, Alabama, and talking about culture shock. So, but a lot of those people there, they had that very much like America's the best country on earth, this, that. And I'm like, how do you know? You haven't left the county, much less your state. So you haven't even seen all of this country. And you probably would freak out if you went to the West Coast. So it's one of those things like having some experience in traveling and understanding we're all human beings, and getting out of the Western rat race of materialism and simplifying, going to some of these tribal nations, you will probably learn a whole lot more. And maybe even I think one of the things we're dealing with now as a crisis in the US is a spiritual crisis. We're getting away from that connection to source or God or whatever your version is, because of all the materialism and the rat race and the chasing of the dollar and the stuff, and getting back to something that's more survival. You get back to that kind of survival nature where you're just like, that's what I think why camping is so big here. Because like once you're camping, and granted we come in with our, glamping, our campers and all the stuff. But I mean, once you get down to fire and food and shelter, once you get to have those three things, then it gets basically back down to this is really all we need.
Yeah, I had the opportunity 9 years ago to go to Rwanda, and it's been almost 2 weeks there, and just to see everything we don't have, or everything we do have that we take for granted that they don't have, and they don't even we a Costco. I mean, come on, man. I mean, golly, our grocery stores don't even have doors. I mean, 24 hours a day, you can basically get anything you want to eat. And, the other places, they eat what they grow in front of their house. They have a milk from a cow or a goat, for their milk. I mean, and so many things that we don't even realize that is just normal for us. That's not normal everywhere else. And when I got home, and the first time I got in the shower with my 15 shower settings on my shower head, and I'm like, these people got to walk, miles just to get a 5-gallon bucket of water so they can bathe if they want to bathe, or, or have water to drink and all these other kind of things. And so we take so many things for granted, man, that we don't realize. We call that the third world, but a third of the world lives like us.
No, absolutely. And you both nailed it. Essentially is that we're natural beings living in an unnatural world. And since the advent of the monetary economic system, we've been having to keep up with this way of life that is not natural. And I think that progression through the last 150, 200 years is what has led to the epidemic of anxiety and depression that we're plagued with today, is because we've gotten away from being outside in nature, and when I went with Katie to Nepal a couple of years ago, back in, was it 2021, because I wanted to see where all the money was going. I wanted to see the school that was being built, the orphanage for the little girls there up in the mountains. It's a 7-hour horrible drive up from Kathmandu up to the village where her orphanage was. And while I was up there, there was little to no signal. And so as opposed to just trying to wait and figure out when I had signal, I turned my phone off. And for 7 days, I did not do one phone call, didn't check one email, didn't even look at it for 7 days. And I tell you, it was probably the best 7 days that I've had in my adult life. Not just being in Nepal, not just being surrounded by the villagers, but that disconnect from technology. And we bathed every other day. Katie, Eric, and I went down to the river and bathed in the river because the well was broken. They had a rock slide from a torrential rainfall that had knocked out the well. So we didn't even have water to bathe in. So we went down to the river, bathed in the river, and all of the food was cooked right there, like you just said, right outside the door. They brought in the food, so we had about the same meal every day for a week, and I was in heaven.
Yeah,
absolutely in heaven.
Yeah, there's something about getting back to something that, getting away from, and I think it's something we don't realize here in the West because we're so inundated with EMFs and radio waves and cell phone waves and all these different things that we don't even realize how that affects everything. Like I was watching something where they were talking about the EMFs just from the plugs and the refrigerators and the microwaves, things like that. When you put fruit or vegetables, say, on your counter and you're just waiting to eat it, they go bad so much faster because of all the extra energy and stuff. And then we're like, well, if that happens to fruit, that happens to vegetables, what is it doing to us? We wonder why we're losing our minds and need to. There's actually a lady in Boulder at the CU Boulder who did an experiment and wrote a book about it called 3-Day Effect. If you spent 3 days out in nature with no cell phones, no electronics whatsoever, and got back in touch with nature, you would cure about half to more of your, probably 75% of your depression or any of the issues you have, because you have unplugged. And to your point, I think unplugging and taking the time to get out into nature, ground yourself, get away from all of the frequencies and things that we are just surrounded by, especially in the cities. I mean, here in the Mile High City, we've 5G everywhere, Wi-Fi everywhere. Like I used to turn my Wi-Fi off and put my phone in a Faraday cage until I realized I live in an apartment building. So I'm surrounded on all sides by everybody else's Wi-Fi. So it's kind of like, well, I guess this is where I'm at until I can get a cabin in the woods. But for our own mental health and physical health, getting back into nature as much as possible, and then even taking trips to places like Costa Rica or Honduras or Mexico or wherever you feel like going, where they do live a simpler life. You might, like Dan Gomer, when he came on, he had a whole life like reset. He was like, I could just sell all my stuff and move down here and retire and just be simple and live in life, instead of having to be chasing some carrot, which I think that's the biggest thing here in the West. We're just constantly chasing the new carrot.
We got to do things like take vacations.
Mm-hmm.
I need a vacation.
I need a vacation for my life.
I need a break. I need to get away. And then we do stuff like, and I love cruises. I love taking a cruise. That's my favorite vacation in the world. The hardest part is at some point you got to turn your cell phone off because and it's like, well, what do I do without my cell phone? And then they fix that. Now they got Wi-Fi on the ships and you don't even have to turn your cell phone off. But the hardest part about taking vacations is trying to unplug from the thing you need to take a vacation from, which is your life, which is turning off your phone and all those kinds of things. I met Katie through a connection we have, John DeYoung, who we just had on not too long ago. And, he does a lot of stuff in India and other parts of the world. And, his main, his main flow right now is with the water filtering in India, just creating a water filter company, because so many places in the world don't even have clean water. I mean, we buy our water in bottles, and then we need it alkaline, and we need it, triple filtered, and all this other kind of stuff. And so many places in the world, man, they don't even have the option to just go up and drink clean water whenever they want.
No, it's 50% of the world doesn't have access to clean drinking water, and even more, that it's barely potable, in some other parts of the world. And I think that we already recognize, scientists recognize us already as the immediate threat to the fresh water supplies globally. And it is something that could definitely, wars will be fought over water.
Wow. That's what actually a lot of the economists, a lot of the futurists say, that the next war is going to be over clean water, and finding ways to desalinate the oceans to create water and stuff, which they would be doing, but it's not financially feasible right now with the technology. So they're like, well, we'll just keep burning oil and not worrying about the rest of the world. But the problem is, and that's why I think, to your point, Chris, it was like, you need to travel, you need to get out of the world, you need to go to these other countries to realize we're all one people. We may talk different, we may look different, we may have different, cultural things, but we're still people. We worry about food, relationships, and what we're doing tomorrow.
Couples
basically
still fight in other countries the same way they fight here. Men are still questioning their masculinity in every country I've ever been to, so on and so forth. So,
like, am I man enough?
Yeah, exactly. And I think that this goes back to what we call what the new flex is, because I think something that transpired in the 70s and 80s is televisions were not only in more households, but there were more channels to choose from. Is that you saw this lifestyles of the rich and famous, and what had happened was people now saw as the way to posture is by how much I like things that I have.
Yeah.
So my cars, my boats, my mansions, my fill in the blank. Where now I think that we're starting to see, I had wealthy friends of mine that are downsizing into smaller homes, and it's not how much money you earn, it's how much money you keep. I mean, so the flex is, what good are you doing with the income that you're making, not what ridiculous material items. People are, I think, always, as long as those items are going to be there, there's going to be that desire. But I'm kind of disgusted when I see people that are showing off flashy cars and houses and boats and everything else. And a lot of the times what we find is either what they're doing to make that money is criminal in nature, or it's immoral.
Yeah.
And so the way that they made their money, just, I don't know how they sleep well at night anyway. I know they sleep on a comfortable bed. That's what I do know. But I think now we see is more the flex is, what value are you bringing to other people's lives? And I think that's a true flex right there, as opposed to what kind of car you're driving.
It's so funny that now Elon Musk is saying he's not going to live anywhere. He's just going to, couch surf and all this other kind of stuff. So speaking of couch surfing, let's surf on over to a break.
Let's do it.
What do you think?
Mad Men of Masculinity, KLDC. We'll be right back.
Awesome. We're doing pretty good.
We might get you out of here pretty close on time.
See if we can get in. Here we go.
We are back.
That's right.
We are the Mad Men of Masculinity. This is KLDC, and on the interwebs everywhere. We got the international man of mystery himself, Mr. Chris Ward, in the house.
That's right.
And this is one of my favorite conversations because we had no idea where it's going, and it's going everywhere.
Yeah. And the cool part is, and so if you're out there on the interwebs, if you hit us up on Facebook or go to YouTube, you get to see like all the short conversations between breaks and all this other kind of stuff. And a lot of times in those conversations is where things kind of either get real, or they get funny, or they get real funny, or they get real weird, or whatever. Today I'm not being real weird. I'm trying to be like,
you've been controlling yourself pretty good. I'm proud of you.
We got company.
Yeah, we got company.
Respectable. And so the crux of this conversation pretty much has been, to me, as I hear it, it's almost like us talking about getting or thinking outside of our normal, what we almost consider like our normal American Western life, and start thinking bigger, thinking globally, maybe thinking different, swimming upstream, doing things different, being a little bit different. And just, you talked about the new flex is like, to me, it is that going against the stream kind of thing. To me, it is, maybe less is more. And I know I'm all about that. And maybe it's, the value of my life and doing something with what I have, as opposed to just amassing stuff. And it's all being about, what commas I can throw out there to the rest of the world.
Yeah, and for what purpose?
Yeah, I mean, you hear stories like Gary Sinise, who,
Mhm.
you know, I think even modern day, most kids probably wouldn't recognize Gary Sinise as an actor, but he's well known as building affordable housing for families in need.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's his flex. He's used his position, that the celebrity that he gained, and rightfully so. He's an incredible actor. But I think what he's doing now, I have more respect for him here. Jimmy Carter,
Yeah.
I mean, he did not have to work another day of his life and worked until his death, building houses, volunteering for Habitat for Humanity, you know, just what, days, weeks before he actually passed away. So, you know, Jimmy Carter as a president, I will always revere him, probably more so than any other president, for the contributions that he made post office.
Yeah. Yeah, he used to scare me for like the last 10 years of his life. I mean, you see him out there, he's got bruises and band-aids everywhere.
And he's still out there with a hammer on the roof.
Hammer.
He got a hammer on the roof, like with a scarf around his neck, like building stuff.
Yeah, he didn't have to swing that hammer. He just held it up there in his Parkinson's, took care of that nail. I mean, I'm like, you go, Jimmy. You get out there and do your thing. But
Absolutely.
that's, you know, it's the point of changing your focus to value. What value do you bring? Now, it's something we talk about to guys quite a bit is, you know, we are usually, you know, women, children, and dogs are loved unconditionally. Men are usually only loved for what we contribute. However, it's been skewed to how much do you bring to the table? How much money can you make? What can I get from you? Basically, is the translation of that. How much money can I get from you, and how much, you know, and how well can I get that from you? And you look at the court system, and we just talked about that. We had David on Pizarro, who's a men's rights activist and divorce attorney, and it's all you see now is ladies going after men for their money. But I think that's part of the shift that we need to make as men. Is like, we need to bring value, of course. That's part of what makes us men, what makes us have purpose and passion in life. But is that necessarily just money? There's so many other ills in the world. There's so many other things you could focus on to bring value to the world. That doesn't necessarily take a whole lot of money. I mean, you could go be a bodyguard in India, Indian pizza. I saw that.
By the way, I think we just accidentally killed off Jimmy Carter too early. He's not dead yet. Yeah.
Sorry, Jimmy.
AP says he was just he made an appearance at some festival yesterday.
Sorry, Jimmy.
Sorry, Jimmy.
But
My bad.
Point being, yeah, I mean, he's still doing it. He's 90.
He's still out there with a hammer in his hand.
And you know, he's still out there doing it. I
This
mean,
would be a Simpsons episode. They'll be like, oh, they prophesied
did
at
it.
5:30.
I did hear at some point recently that he was like officially in hospice care and that kind of
Yeah,
stuff.
that's what I thought.
But AP says he just made it an appearance.
Oh, good.
Either way,
Sorry, Jimmy.
the point doesn't change.
No.
I mean, you know, as after office, you know, it's almost like he never stopped working for good, and he never stopped doing good things. And I think, man, us as, you know, what if as men we latched on to the idea of doing good with our life beyond just even the measurables or the tangible stuff, the stuff that shows up on the tax form or the stuff that shows up on a resume. I mean, what if our legacy is the stuff, the good stuff that we left behind, and the interesting life that we led, as opposed to just trying to keep up with whatever status that we're supposed to have.
Yeah, I bet you if you really got into kind of the mindset and the purpose and passion that he had, I bet you he wouldn't have lived to 98 in such a way if he didn't have that thing that was dear to his heart. And a horrible statistic, but it's out there. For most men who retire from whatever corporate job they have, their life expectancy is about 18 months in retirement. Because once you've spent all your life chasing that carrot and doing whatever thing, and you don't have a purpose or passion after that, you're just out. You're like, well, what am I here for? And men need purpose and passion.
Yeah, well, the oldest living president definitely has purpose and passion. He'll be 99 on the 1st.
Wow.
And so, yeah, I mean,
We can do it one more year.
We can do it one more.
Come on, president, you can do it.
We'll start pumping oxygen into there.
Need some more peanuts.
What was that comedy about Bob Hope? Keep hope alive.
Yeah.
Keep Jimmy going.
And you know, man, I think there's profound truth to that in terms of us having purpose, us having something greater than ourselves to live for, a why to wake up for in the morning, or why you get out of bed, and that's doing things different, experiencing things different, and not making ourselves the center of the universe.
Well, since you are our, international man of mystery, and you have all this experience, what would you tell the men out there? How can they find some purpose? How, if they're lacking it, or what would be your kind of tips and tricks of like, all right, maybe I'm not happy with my life now, but I can go in this direction. I can, go down these avenues. I can take the path less traveled by. Like, what would be some of your advice for a man who's wanting to do those things?
I think it's a great topic and one that needs to be discussed openly in even social settings, because I think that is an additional, epidemic that we're facing in America, of people that are unable to find their purpose. And I've talked to a lot of high school age students and talked to them about what is it that they can do, because I think a lot of people are disenfranchised by the job market. And I ask people, to write down, what would you do if you could get paid to do anything? Like, if there was something out there that there was a great salary, a livable wage that you could earn by doing anything, what would those do? Now, kids are typically going to say, I'd stay home and watch TV.
Play video games.
Yeah, I play video games. Well, and if, there are people that make an incredible living playing video games.
That's the thing.
I have friends who are gamers that they make an incredible living playing video games and broadcasting them on YouTube.
Yeah, you got to remember that, when you become a professional gamer, that's all you do. It can take the fun out of it.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't. That doesn't sound like
my thumbs would just fall off.
I could, yeah, exactly. Like, after the first Nintendo series was over, that was pretty much my gaming life ended right there. But I think identifying what you're passionate about is doing just that. Is what would get you out of the morning on mornings that you don't want to get out of bed? Like, when it's cold and you're comfortable under your blankets, what is it that would make you jump out of bed to go do, early in the morning? And then do something that, that you would do whether you were getting paid or not. And that's why I tell people, because a lot of people say, Chris, you've been doing Legal Shield for 16 years. What is it? Why Legal Shield? And I said, because I would recommend Legal Shield to people whether I was getting paid for it or not. And that is a massive differentiator. And I think that if you find some sort of something missing from your community, this is where we find opportunities. So whenever I'm listening to people and they say, and just to give you an idea, as I saw somebody post, I think it was our good friend James Shepard here, a big networker in the community. He had shared a post, and I think he didn't create it. I think somebody else did. He just shared it. But it was something to the effect of, as opposed to having dating apps, something like that. Like, what if they had connection apps, something like that, where you could find people that you could be, find mutual, perhaps working relationships together, and say, this is the kind of person I'm looking for. And then the matchmaker ties you up with other people you can mesh with professionally, because even if you're self-employed and you have your own business, you're going to need people from all different kinds of trades, from accountant to attorney to, graphics design artist to marketers, because even though you're self-employed, most of us have never had actual training in sales and marketing. So you're going to need all of these people to help you. And so why not have an app that can connect you with other people like that? LinkedIn is a little bit like that, but if there was a dating app, but it wasn't for dating, it was for connecting professionals. And I said, James, I think you found a business opportunity.
Yeah, networking app.
If you see something that's missing in you, I did this in California. I was talking to a couple that they had an outdoor lights business. So for Christmas, they went out every holiday season, and they had people that were contracted that annually they'd go put up their lights on their houses and their trees. And then weeks after the holidays were over, they'd come and take all those away, put those lights in boxes, and then come back and do it the next year. But they were like, well, okay, that's great for the holiday season, but we've got to figure out, what is a market that we can fill the rest of the year? And I said, I know exactly what it is. One of the it was the non-emergency medical transport companies had been purchased, and we were running them out of a neighboring city. So now those vans were no longer going to continue into Monterey, where I lived, Monterey and the surrounding area. So I said, now anybody that calls for non-emergency medical transport is going to spend thousands and thousands of more dollars to get that service. So I said, why don't you start a non-emergency medical transport service? Because there's no competition in the county of 150,000 people. I said, so even if, So they started up their company, and first year, we're at a profit margin. We're in profit. And I said exactly. And now they had to work their tails off because the calls that they got they were constantly getting calls. They were having to turn business away. And so they worked on their marketing, and they started, at a shoestring budget, just enough to buy vans. They had to get licensed and permitted and everything because they were using non-emergency medical transport. But it was a very successful business that they continue to run now 15 years later. And so if you find something in your marketplace that you see as a need, and it's a need that you're passionate about fulfilling, I think that you got an incredible opportunity for yourself there.
I always say that if you ever say somebody should do something about that somebody is probably you.
Hey, you somebody.
Yeah, you somebody. Hey, before we get out of here, before we get off of these airs, Chris, how can folks get a hold of you, man? How can folks, if they want to find you, if they want to get a hold of you, if they want to reach out to you, how can they do that?
Well, you can just Google Chris Ward at Legal Shield. I pretty much pop up there. But if you're looking on Facebook, you can find me on Facebook at Chris Ward of the World, or on Instagram at Ward of the World.
That is awesome. I'm sorry you couldn't stay the whole hour, but I'm so glad you could come in for 3 segments. But thank you so much. This was an awesome.
Absolutely. It's always an honor to share. So I appreciate you gentlemen inviting me out.
We'll have to have you back because, even though we didn't know where this conversation was going, I think there was lots of golden nuggets, lots of things that people need to hear. And we'll definitely have you back. This needs to continue. We need to have some more of these conversations where we don't know where they're going, but it's all gold. We're digging for
kind of how
gold
my
here.
mind works. I never know where it's going.
Awesome. We'll be right back, everybody. Madmen of Masculinity, KLDC. Boom. I think we got you right on time, man.
That is outstanding.
Trying to get you out of here.
Yeah, thank you, guys.
Man. Good stuff.
So we'll take a little pause for all of our viewers on YouTube, and we'll be right back.
Yeah,
And I'll send you
skip ahead a minute.
I'll send you this link.
You'll
Probably about
see us.
20, 30 minutes.
Oh, perfect.
before we get
Yeah.
done.
I'll share it on my YouTube channel.
And thanks for making the big drive. I'll be following right behind you.
Oh, yeah. It's always
Poor Jimmy Carter, man. You guys tried to kill off Jimmy Carter.
I
He's
know.
still
I
alive,
hope he
man.
doesn't die tomorrow. And then all
Yeah,
of a sudden everybody's
around.
going to be like,
That's gonna be our fault.
You guys trying to.
it's like The Simpsons when they go back and watch old episodes of The Simpsons. They're like, they knew it was going to happen.
Hopefully it wasn't us.
I know.
No doubt, man.
Guys, it's an honor. Thank you very
no
much.
doubt, man.
I'd love to come back.
We'll have you back.
All right, brother.
Thank you, guys.
See you, my man.
Drive
How you going?
safely.
Thank you, brother. How you going?
Watch out for those situational awareness deficient people out
Oh,
there.
I know. That's every roundabout in Golden.
Everyone.
See you,
See you
man.
guys.
Take it easy.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Reset. We gotta reset back to 2 of it.
You ready?
Yep.
Hey, we're back.
We are back
Yeah, Madmen of Masculinity.
on KLDC.
Yeah, that's right. That's how we roll.
And it's just the 2 of us now. We scared him off. No,
Yeah.
I'm kidding. He, as an international man of mystery, he's very busy,
You know, it's
and he had to go.
just the whole idea of swimming upstream, man.
Man, I'm
Thinking
telling you.
different, man. You know, if you want something different, you gotta think something different. And we, as men, it's time for us to be different, man. It's time for us to just see things different, man. Do stuff different, man, and not try to fit in, not try to conform to everything that people say, whoever people are. People say we're supposed to be. And a lot of times it's
They
conforming to a female narrative of what men should be.
Yeah.
Most of us were raised by women. And so a lot of us think of, well, they say I should be this, they say I should be that. No, I don't think so.
No, and that's the thing. We, especially nowadays, and that's one of the things I had that kind of revelation myself this weekend. And was like, I am being bombarded and influenced by all these outside forces, media and marketing and social media and all these different things. But is that really what I want? And can I set boundaries for myself, like putting the phone down, going out in nature, getting around people who I actually enjoy getting around instead of chasing people on social media that I don't even know, and maybe put some quality over quantity in my life and find something that actually fulfills me and fills me up. And, and like having Chris here and showing like your life doesn't have to look like a 9 to 5 working in the corporate world. I mean, if that's what you want to do, that's cool. But if that's not fulfilling you, there's innumerable options out there and opportunities. I mean, see a need, fill a need. I know it sounds trite, but it's true. Like you see something, you're like, oh, somebody should do this. You're somebody. Maybe you should do it.
I tell you what I need to do.
What's that?
In fulfilling. I need to play some golf, dude.
Man, yeah.
I mean, this is a squirrel moment, but man, I was driving over here, man. I was driving down the 8th fairway, and ooh, it was looking so good, man. The grass.
I know it's
nice
been a
and
couple
shiny,
weeks,
man. It's been sunny out there. It has been a couple weeks. I'm overdue. But I mean, again, that's kind of speaking about, going upstream. Playing golf is not something that people where I'm from do. And that's why it took me so long in my life to do it. And, I wish I would have found it. I wish I would have discovered it a long time ago. But it takes getting outside of your comfort zone, getting outside of what's normal for where you are.
Yeah, see, you were a Tiger hater. You didn't want to jump on that Tiger bandwagon. You were like, man, he's just whatever. And it's like, you didn't realize. Now you're like, man, I should have jumped on the bandwagon.
I just thought it was too expensive and
Well,
it takes too much of this and too much of that.
It's not really.
No, it's
once
not.
you do it right, if
Exactly.
you take your time, you do it right.
Exactly.
As long as you're not snobbish about it.
But it's about getting outside of what we think is normal or what we've known, seeing other parts of the world, traveling, getting into different cultures, different spaces, and discovering that, man, maybe everything is not the way that I thought it always was or the way it has to be. Maybe I can do some different stuff. Maybe I can experience some different stuff. Maybe the way I've been thinking my whole life, the world is, maybe it ain't that way.
Yeah. One of the sayings that I love, which I attempt to remind myself of quite often, is like, if you want things in your life to change, you have to change things in your life, which means the things you've been doing, if they're not fulfilling you, if they're not giving you purpose and passion and making you want to get out of bed in the morning, then change those things. Change them to something else. And if the job isn't doing it for you, there's other jobs. I mean, nowadays, especially after the pandemic and all this stuff, there's lots of jobs out there. There's lots of businesses that are, needing work. So, I mean, you can bounce around and find something that works for you. You can start your own business. You can get with people. And that's one of the things that, especially with virtual assistants and the internet and everything now, it's easier now than ever to start a business, because if you don't know something, you can Google it, you can YouTube it, you can find a virtual assistant to do those things for you, because we have our own skill set. A lot of us are good at creatives or good at this, but maybe we're missing the back end or the whatever. You can find somebody to do that for you. Yeah. And you can create a business that actually might be fulfilling for you, that fulfills a need that you see in the world, that could finance the rest of your life. And then you don't have to take a vacation from your life. You can actually just have a life that you enjoy.
You know what? And the internet has made it a whole lot easier to monetize and to make a career. Now, a lot of people are taking advantage of that in some, I think, maybe not so healthy ways. But I mean, what I'm thinking of now is, man, YouTube, man. There's people with YouTube channels that, I'm gonna confess, a couple of my favorite YouTube channels is a guy that he built a pond like on his property, like a 5-acre pond, and it was all about. It started off with how he built it and what he, how he constructed it and whatever. And then it was, filling it and getting the water right. Then it was stocking. And this is over like the course of, a year or two or something, stocking it with, with fish and then the wildlife. And he puts cameras up all over the place. And he just talks about that. Another one is a guy in South Florida that just films boat ramps. I mean, just films boat ramps and, people trying to, like dock their boats, and you would think that, but it's pretty comical, man. I'm telling you, man, it is, just watching people dock their boats.
Are you eating special gummies or
no,
some
man,
herbal help when you're watching these videos?
There's other guys that they literally just film boats coming and going. I mean, I'm telling you, man, the point is, but this guy's got like hundreds of thousands of subscribers, man. I mean, this guy, that's his full-time job, is just going out and filming boat ramps.
Yeah, there's a guy who cracks me up, Corey B. I think is his name, Corey B. But he just does these like almost like reaction videos. Like somebody says, "Oh, you can make a Wendy's flurry thing, or you can make these and he just does these recipes. He's like, "Hey, no way!" And then he does it, and he reacts to it, and it's comical as all get out. And I'm like, how did he come up with that? Because I can't get enough watching it because I'm cracking up the whole time, and I want to try like 90% of those recipes. Like, I mean, see a need, fill a need, or if something, I mean, nowadays you can film anything. And if it's entertaining and informative and people want it, don't try to change the world too much like we are, because people are resistant to it. So we're on a slow build. Yeah. One of these days we'll get viral. But yeah, I mean, to your point, you can film anything and people are going to watch it.
I'm telling you, man, I mean, it's a thing. And so the whole point is thinking outside of the box, doing things different, opening yourself up to different opportunities. Young folks today are, I almost think, afraid or want to shy away from joining the military for different reasons and all this other kind of stuff. And man, you can get all kinds of experience and see different places, and you can, get you get education on some stuff. You can learn a lot of stuff. You can get, you can come out of that experience with knowledge and information that directly transfers to a career in the outside world that, in the civilian world that you would otherwise have maybe had to go to college for, and all this on top of getting the GI Bill and all these other kind of things. But the whole point, I think, of all of this today is just thinking outside of the box and doing things different and not being stuck in the same lane of the highway.
Yeah, there's so many opportunities out there. And one of the things, I'm pro-military for the fact that I grew up as an Army brat. I went into the Air Force, and had I not, you may not make the most money while you're in the military, but if you want to learn something and have it paid for, and then have the option afterwards of going to college again and having that paid for. Oh, and if you do 2 years, you can have medical care for the rest of your life in perpetuity, like Chris said. I use that. I utilize that. These are all benefits that you have. So maybe take some time to research the jobs and the forces and decide what works for you. Like Kirk is Coast Guard. He loves boats. He loves being on the ocean. I love planes. Like if I had been a little smarter or maybe a little more headstrong or a little more aggressive, I might have been a pilot. But because I love planes, I went in the Air Force. I worked on jets and played with bombs and things like that. And had I been a little more on it and researched a little better when I got out, I could have been like doing some of these government contract jobs, blowing up old munitions or whatever, and making lots of money, traveling around. So to Kirk's point, having an open mind and not getting stuck in the box. We live in so many little echo chambers nowadays, especially because of social media and stuff and where we live. Having an open mind to the point of, hey, what is that? Let me learn about that and see that there's other options, because you could do whatever you want to do, especially here in the States. You have the option. And yes, we're pro-military. We all did it. But if that's not your way, there's other ways of doing things. The internet is worldwide. It's global. So you can find a niche. Just, you got to be persistent, though.
I've been in college and I've been in the military. You go to college, you can be broke. Most people that go to college, while you're in college, man, we used to make grilled cheese sandwiches on an ironing board. Just because it was cheap and it was free. So you're going to be broke. You can spend that same 4 or 5 years, in the military on one contract and go to school. I take my son, for example, he definitely is not a college type, but he went in and he's already been through 2 different schools. He's stationed at a base right now where he's working. He's making a career. He's off the books, like off the parent books, meaning he's bought a car. He's already on a plan to get his RN, his registered nursing license, while he's in, and have them pay for it in the next 3 years and come out as an RN. And he'll still have the GI Bill if he wants to go back to school.
Yeah, and he's getting fed. He's getting housed. Hey. So sometimes, the old way was high school, college, yada, yada, yada. But nowadays, your best option, especially if you do a little research, will probably be the military.
Yeah. And there's so many different ways to think out of the box. And so, yeah, especially if you're a youngin', and if you're not, guess what? You can do something that is your passion outside of your work. You can have something that is your career, something that pays the bills, and you can also have something else that you do outside of that fulfills a greater calling in your life. You can have a 9 to 5, and you can have a 5 to 9. Mm-hmm. And so don't think that you have to. I got a job, so I can't do anything else. No, okay, you got something that pays your bills. Now go do something else that pays that pays your life's rent in terms of you being here. Like, what's your purpose? What's your why? Why did you beat 40 million sperm to get that egg?
Yeah, you can look at your job, your 9 to 5, as the financier of your passion, of your project. And that's what Kirk and I have been doing for 5 years now. We've been talking to you crazy folks over the internet for 5 years while we're doing our Clark Kent jobs, coming here to do our Superman thing. And, maybe one day this will take over and this will be what we do full time. But even if not, this still fills a big hole in both of us, fulfilling our purposes, fulfilling our passions, and feeling like we're doing something good in the world. So there's so many options out there. Yeah. So you can follow a Chris Ward path and go in the military and then come out and be, Secret Service, bodyguard, whatever, James Bond kind of stuff. Or, you go be an artist, go do whatever, but you have the options. So please, please, please don't get stuck in whatever hamster wheel you're on and think that you're just stuck there. You can get off and find something else.
Yeah. Do something that has some passion, that gives you some kind of passion, some kind of fire, something that you look forward to doing. Do something like, whether that's your career or whether that's something you do outside of your career, but something that is your passion. We live without passion and we end up being just stuck in the rat race, and you wake up, you go to work and pay the bills, and eventually you die. And it's like, life is too short for all of that, man. Find something that is your passion. Go do that. Go make a difference. If it wasn't for our full-time jobs, we wouldn't be able to do this right now. But guess what? We got a couple sponsors coming on board, man.
Sir.
You know what I'm saying? We're producing economy through this show. You're going to start to hear some sponsors, see some sponsors, some folks that are partnering with us commercially and doing this thing. And so, man, it's a good feeling. So go out and do that kind of stuff, folks.
Yeah, go out and do that. Find people that are like-minded, partner together, and drop your little pebble in the pond, make your little ripples in the world, and make a dent in the universe.
And we want to encourage you to live your passion.
Yes.
Man. If you're a man, if you're living your passion, then you're living exactly what you're supposed to do. Something that makes your life better by making the world a better place. And so with that,
Mad Men out.